So, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development Techniques podcast. Today we are gonna watch a video by Tim Ferriss talking about Stoicism. Two very cool topics, things, I don't really know, but I'm looking forward to it. I have watched this video before. It is nothing new to me, but I've probably listened to it for several times, but I don't know the essences of it, and I don't know the content of it, so we're gonna have a look in a very short period of time. It is called, let me do it like this, How to Apply Stoic Philosophy to Your Life with Tim Ferriss.
Our chef, Tools of Titans. Tim Ferriss here, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, 4-Hour Body.
By the way, it was uploaded 5 years ago by Tim Ferriss, and this is basically all I know.
4-Hour Chef, Tools of Titans, and so on and so forth. I talk a lot about Stoic philosophy, and I've had a lot of questions about Stoic philosophy. I've produced audiobooks about Stoic philosophy, which have made their way into Super Bowl teams, all the way from management to players and everything in between. Why do I talk about Stoic philosophy so much? Well, to a lot of people who are watching this, as was true for me for a very long time, you hear Stoic and you think maybe of a cow standing in the rain, just accepting whatever tragedy and terrible circumstances befall it. That is not what I'm advocating at all. Or maybe you imagine somebody with no emotion whatsoever.
And the latter of those two examples is basically something a lot of people bring up, and I always thought why would anybody think like this? Why would anybody believe that this is the case? But apparently, this is indeed what some people think like, and it is indeed how things sometimes are in people's heads. Because I don't know, I think somebody said something, or some article or something, I don't remember, but I was a bit struck, this is indeed what people believe, apparently.
Also not what I'm advocating. So the way we use Stoic in modern English is somewhat different from the way that it was used when it came from Stoa, which is actually porch. And specifically, I think that Stoicism is a fantastic operating system for thriving in high-stress environments. What does that mean? It means that it is a framework for making better decisions and training yourself to be less reactive. It goes very well with different types of meditation, whether that's TM or using an app like Headspace or Calm and so on. But you don't necessarily need both. They're
transcendental meditation, I think, TM, and it is not that easy to get into that. I think to actually experience it, one has to go to a person that is certified doing that or something. I was looking in it because I thought apparently this is something that all those very great and very wealthy people apparently are doing, and but it's just not really easy to get into. I think things might have changed. It's been some time since I've looked it up, but back then it at least was the case.
Complementary. Stoic philosophy, and I should say that probably around 2004, I picked up a book that was the collected letters of Seneca the Younger, who's one of the real figureheads, I would say, in the last few years at least, who has become very popular as a Stoic thinker and writer. Has been popular for some 1,000+ years, but there's been a huge resurgence. Others would include Marcus Aurelius, who used to be the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at the time. And then there are others, Cato and so on, Epictetus, who was formerly a slave. So you have a very wide spectrum of well-known Stoic thinkers, and you should find the one that speaks to you best. But I picked up this book of Seneca's writings, didn't really expect much of it. And when people ask me now, what is your favorite book of all time? The book you've read the most, the book you've gifted the most. I've gifted hundreds of copies of Seneca's letters. So the moral letters to Lucilius, Lucilius, the moral letters to Lucilius by Seneca the Younger. He was a very famous playwright, one of the wealthiest people in Rome, advisor to the emperor. That ultimately didn't work out so well for him, but he was on the front line. So what I appreciate about Stoic philosophy is how...
As far as I remember, he was brought, I think 2 times. I do not know the word now, but he was just brought to some island on his own, because I do not remember the reason, but the whole thing, like, he was the advisor for the emperor, and Tim pointed out it didn't just it didn't just go that well, and yeah, he was on some island, and I think he also died then, kind of the second time. I might be mistaken completely there, but yeah.
How well it is used in highly challenging circumstances, and some of the basics of Stoic philosophy, which have been applied in the Super Bowl, which have been applied in training of all different types, have been applied by prisoners of war, POWs, in wartime, like Stockdale, for instance, James Stockdale, are, I would say, a few things. Number one, it trains you, much like the Serenity Prayer in a way, but it's more systematic, to focus on differentiating between the things that you can control and things you cannot control, and really only focusing your energy on the former. So, for instance, if you watch your friends spinning out of control on social media, freaking out about politics, and all they do is bitch and whine and whinge about politics, well, if we sat down and thought about it, the vast majority of those people are not going to be in a position, nor are they going to take steps to change any of that reality. Therefore, it is a lot of wasted energy and calories and brain cycles. All right? So really, really learning to repetitively, consistently focus on things that are within your sphere of control. That doesn't mean that you're passive. And certainly the reason that people like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, the founders of this great country, of the United States of America, who were certainly rebels and revolutionaries and extremely aggressive and contrarian in many, many ways, went to Stoicism is because they knew they had a lot of hard battles ahead, and they wanted to make wise decisions. All right, so number one, you're learning to focus on and expand the sphere of action that you have, the things that you can control.
Isn't there an expression like picking your fights? And I think it is just the same. Like, I'm picking my fights. I'm just, picking those things that I can do something about. I cannot do something about everything, and I'm also not trying to do so. So, the weather, very classic example that I always bring up. We cannot control the weather, but still a lot of people are like really unhappy when, it just, turns out to be the opposite of what they were expecting or just trying. But it is what it is. We can't change it, as we cannot change so many things, but bringing up and thinking about things that we cannot change leads us to what can we change? Or are we mistaken by the assumption that we cannot change X, Y, and Z, but indeed we can? Of course, we all have talents, some things that we are good at, some things that we are really bad at, and so on and so forth. But I think that, maybe we can indeed do something about that. Realizing a new talent. Maybe just, trying to figure out certain things, asking more questions, asking better questions, asking different questions.
Next, you're going to systematically train yourself to be less prone to overreacting to, say, criticism. So Cato, who is considered by some to be the perfect Stoic, fascinating character, Cato, would sometimes wear a tunic of an unpopular color so that he would be ridiculed in the Senate and by other people. He did this specifically, and other things like it, so that he would train himself to only be ashamed of those things worth being ashamed of. So the superficial things he would experiment with, and he would catalyze other people making fun of him or insulting him so that he would develop a tolerance for it. This is very, very practical. And there are many corollaries to this, as well as the next piece, which is, in effect, practicing poverty in the worst case scenarios so that they hold less power over you. And that could take the form of, say, Kevin Kelly, who's been on the Tim Ferriss Show podcast, fascinating technology futurist, as well as founding editor of Wired magazine. So he knows worst case scenario, because he has done so much backpacking and lived off of instant oatmeal, that worst case scenario, he can always have his backpack, instant oatmeal, and a cup of coffee, and he can be happy. And he knows that because he's practiced it. And Seneca, in letter 13 of his letters to Lucilius, the moral letters to Lucilius, which was, I believe, on festivals and fasting, talks about setting aside a certain number of days, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a certain number of days during which you will eat the cheapest of fare, wear the coarsest of dress, etc., asking yourself all the while, is this the condition that I so feared? So, practically speaking, I've built this into my own life by fasting, by exposing myself to cold. I have a practice of cold exposure, which is done very safely. I have different types of planned suffering and planned poverty so that any type of unplanned suffering or unplanned financial hit will have less of an impact on me. And this applies in many different fields. This is, I suppose, a compatible ethos with the more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in wartime. All right, you want to prepare for the unexpected turns of fate by simulating what the worst case scenarios would be. This is very, very practical. And then if we look back to Cato, for instance, well, he would wear these ridiculous outfits. You know, I will spend time walking through, say, California, in San Francisco, okay, hippie liberal central with, say, a cowboy hat on, just to see what happens, because you will get all sorts of sideways glances and so on. And I might then go to Utah. I went to a very conservative part of Utah, and I wore what I call my party pants for a day or two. And party pants are these very flamboyant, bright blue, floral pattern pants from Bonobos. I don't know if they sell them anymore, which effectively look like the upholstery on your grandma's couch. They are hideous. And did that very deliberately to force me to interact with people in a way that would condition me to be able to take bolder steps or have more uncomfortable conversations in the future, because all serious problems, all important matters require uncomfortable conversations. I think you can.
And I don't know if he's going to mention that, but also asking for discounts whenever, basically, but especially when you're, grabbing a coffee or something, asking for 10% off or 20% off or just some discount. Can I have a discount on that? I think, the the minority of people are going to ask that when grabbing a coffee and whatever, but why not? Why actually not? And also, I've been trying to incorporate that at some point, like, sleeping on the floor to kind of just, see what this is like, and many other things. Think about it. Think about those life circumstances that you're fearing, those circumstances. There are many, many, many different circumstances. Maybe not having a partner anymore, maybe not having that much good food anymore, maybe not having the money anymore. And I think also kind of, going through those very bad scenarios leads to certain actions that you should be taking, leading to certain things you should be thinking about. Should I spend less money on X, Y, and Z? Should I do this, that, and the other thing? Those things. Think about it. I believe that it could lead to a lot of good decisions for the near and also far future.
Measure your success in many ways by the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. And Stoicism helps with that. So I go down the list, but there are very, very practical steps to take, and then you can translate that into your own life. So for instance, a lot of the advice that you might get from a former Navy SEAL commander like Jocko Willink, he wouldn't call Stoicism, but the mental toughness that he has developed and also trained in other people is very much, I'm not going to say identical, but a close cousin to Stoicism. And if you look at, for instance, advice that you would get once you're thrust into the public eye, and a lot of these letters, the moral letters to Lucilius, are along the lines of, "Dear Lucilius."
And I think at this point we are going to end the episode there. I really hope that Tim and myself have been able to point certain things out, certain very valuable things out. And I'm hopefully going to see you the next time. So